This is Outcomes, a show about uncovering the hundreds of micro-innovations that help make Australia's healthcare system one of the best in the world. On the show, you'll meet the doers, the Australian clinicians, care workers and healthcare professionals driving the micro changes we seek to showcase. Theirs are the stories we're here to tell. I'm your host, Will Egan, and I'm the CEO of AusMed Education. I'm really passionate about improving the health and prosperity of the people in my community. I believe Australia does have a great health system, and every conversation we have on this show highlights why. Today, I'm joined by Simon Kerrigan. Simon is the founder and CEO of Guide Healthcare, an allied health provider with a particular focus in physiotherapy. Guide stands out for its sustained and novel approach to innovation. You may have heard of Guide, for they are the organisation that runs PT events like the London Marathon, a nationwide, here in Australia, competitive exercise event that now has over 1,000 older people participating in it each year. And this is just one of the innovative things that Guide does. In today's show, we explore this and more of these innovations and the culture and systems that Simon and his team has put in place to keep delivering upon them. Let's jump in. Well, welcome to the show, Simon. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Will. I'm excited to be here. It's obviously nice to be catching up with you in a different format.
Absolutely. A little bit of a step back from the events that we usually see each other at.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, Simon, I might get you to introduce yourself for the benefit of our listeners. Tell us a little bit about your story and your background.
Yeah, so I'm a physiotherapist by trade, and nowadays I'm the managing director of Guide Healthcare. So we are an external provider of allied health services, primarily into the residential aged care and home care sector. We do a little bit of NDIS work as well. So I've been running Guide for the last kind of 6 years. And I guess my motivation for starting a business or starting Guide was very much to try and challenge the perception of what older people can achieve, particularly older people who are accessing residential aged care or home care support services, and as well as to try and be a little bit creative around the design and implementation of particularly physiotherapy services, all different parts of the allied health services spectrum.
Tell us what allied health is. We all hear this term. Elaborate. Can you expand? It is a bit of a catch-all sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think as an allied health professional, we often kind of just say it and presume that everyone knows what we're talking about. And that's particularly important when we're talking with the older adults who are accessing these services. But allied health encompasses a range of different registered health professionals, so including physios, but also occupational therapists and speech pathologists, dieticians, podiatrists, anyone who falls outside of that medical model, so your doctors and specialists are often umbrellaed under the term of allied health professionals.
I think in the residential and home care sectors, this industry is now largely a kind of subcontracted workforce. Is that fair to say? They're not typically sitting on staff, or have I got that wrong?
I suppose at the moment there's quite a bit of evolution happening with how aged care providers are looking to provide these services. So for a long time under the previous funding model or the ACFI system, I would say for the most part it was subcontracted out, and so mostly external providers. There has been a little bit of a shift and change in modelling where some aged care providers are now looking to bring their allied health teams, particularly their physiotherapy services, in-house. So it's more of a blend at the moment, and I think because of the challenges that the aged care industry is facing at the moment, particularly around funding levels and adapting to legislative change, providers are looking to different models and playing around with how they actually staff those services. So there's certainly a very strong presence. For us, we are an external provider. So we think we can add a lot of value because of the nature of our business. We obviously work with lots of different providers and across lots of different homes. We're very much a specialist service as far as staying up to date what's happening within the sector, but also within what physiotherapists and other allied health professionals can do as far as working with older people. So for us, this is what we do, and obviously we're very, very passionate about it. So we see a huge value in the external or the subcontracted model. But yeah, it's there is some change, and providers are looking at different avenues, and that can include employing their own teams internally.
We think about things in a similar way at AusMed. Anytime you've got a dedicated provider that specialises in a field, everyone in that business is going to work every day thinking only about that subject matter, in your case, allied health or physiotherapy. compare that to, say, some of the businesses you provide services to, they've probably got 100 things to worry about, physio just being one of them. What's the benefits of physiotherapy for older people? I know these are simple questions, but I'm keen to hear your perspective on why it matters.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the question. From a physiotherapy perspective, what's been typically thought about is things kind of like pain management, maybe post-surgery or post an acute health event. And certainly that's still a massive part of what physiotherapists can do. As health professionals, we're influenced by this kind of how society views older people, thinking about sort of fragility and people who are maybe a little bit slow or boring, or like how older people are kind of perceived in the media or online, or how they're portrayed in things like movies where they're always the forgetful ones, maybe not the most exciting or whatever. And I think where we need to get better is actually recognizing that older people still are motivated, strong and courageous. They have passions, goals, they're competitive, and we're probably not tapping into those things as well as we could be. So what I would like to see, or where I think physio can really improve, is not just thinking about the reactive nature of health professionals or the reactive nature of when older people are accessing physio. So for example, an older person's had a fall at home, maybe they've fractured a hip, but maybe they haven't. So if they've had a hip fracture, it's likely that they'll just follow that pathway. They'll end up in hospital. They'll probably have to have a surgical repair, and they'll end up seeing physios and other health professionals in order to help them through that rehab journey. Maybe they've had a fall at home and they're in a home care package, so their providers are proactive and refer them onto physio. And again, you'll then have somebody come in who helps that person to improve their strength and balance and has a look at other ways that we might be able to support them to not fall. But where I'd really like to see a change in approach is recognizing that there's a value in proactive accessing of services. So from a physio perspective, it's much better for me to be working with an older person before they fall. So I want to build strength. I want to make sure they're nice and robust. I want to give them the confidence to be able to get down onto the floor and also off the floor. And if they do have a fall, to be able to actually take that fall by extending their arms and having the strength in their upper limbs to make sure that we're not, causing an upper limb fracture or other injury. So there's a massive scope of physio, and I guess I've not even touched on things like cardiorespiratory health, supporting people post things like strokes and that neuro rehab side of things. It's really a very broad range, and I think that's what makes physio a great place to be working within, is that we can actually support people in so many different ways. But from my perspective, as somebody who loves working with older adults, I'd really like to see that move towards seeing the value in proactive approach to services and seeing that physios actually can create great outcomes. So we shouldn't have this expectation that older people will just progressively decline over time. We should recognize that actually, if we put some good services in place, if we support and educate the older people that we're working with, that actually their physical ability and function and their longevity and their wellness outcomes over time can actually significantly improve, by just making sure that we're continue to be proactive and we support them to kind of work towards their goals and keep doing the things that are exciting and fun for them, including being a part of their community. So you can tell, Will, this is an area of passion for me. I could ramble on about supporting older people with physio in particular all day. Yeah, that's
a really fantastic perspective, and I think you're right. We do have this expectation. It's kind of an implied thing. It's almost, I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, a similar mindset, which is they are fragile. They need supervision, but that's not the case. And a proactive approach to physiotherapy and allied health in general, sustains that quality of life, maybe all the way to the end.
Yeah.
And there doesn't need to be a cascading of illness or events that cause unnecessary deterioration in quality of life and probably physical pain and encumbrance, I suppose.
Sure.
Inability to walk and all of the effects that has on your lifestyle as well.
Yeah. And Will, you make a good comparison there. Like what we often do with older adults is we can often sort of infantilize or take away control. We start to make choices for the older people we're looking after, and it always comes from a place of care, but often it can be a little bit misdirected. So by taking away the choice, or particularly taking away the opportunity for people to participate in different activities. So for example, if we just use home care, what often happens when older people end up accessing home care, and it's because they need support at home, they'll often get services that are doing things for them. So, someone will come in and take over all the washing and the the cleaning and the gardening, and obviously those things can be necessary for people, but often we're not doing enough where we're actually supporting the person who may have loved gardening or may have got some self-worth out of maintaining the household or getting their washing done and hanging it on the line. If I think about my grandparents, my nan was very, very house proud, and my granddad loved getting out the garden, what have you. We often take away those opportunities, and it's often because we want to support the person and we want to keep them safe. We don't want you to fall over. We don't want you to get hurt, things like that. And we need to recognize that, we are working with older adults. We want to make sure that they maintain that self-efficacy and self-worth, make sure they have choices. And education is a big part of that, but also recognizing the role we play in supporting people to continue to do the things that they love. So continue to give those opportunities. And yeah, from a physio perspective, that's a massive one for me, is kind of tapping into those goals and motivations, and also trying to make sure that whatever we do from physio perspective is targeted towards supporting people to continue to do the things that they love and give their life meaning and value.
I think that's a nice segue. That sets the scene for the experience and the perspective that you have. My observation, just as a member of the healthcare community, is that the business that you've built is a great advocate and champion of those ideals. I've really been looking forward to this conversation because I'm keen to learn about how that approach and those values have influenced, in particular, the events that Guide runs.
One of the things that we do, which I think is quite unique at Guide, and to be honest, it was one of the things that when I started the business was a motivating factor, because I wanted to be able to implement these types of services. So we call them our cross-site competitions or our cross-site events. And essentially, we take inspiration from often world events. So it might be the Olympics, it might be, the Scottish Highland Games. There could be marathons that are happening around the world. And then we design an exercise-based event which caters to all levels of ability for the older people that we support to essentially move more. So whether that be, if it's a marathon event, we want to support people to be walking more. If it's something like the Power Olympics, we might pick some power-based events like a long jump, believe it or not, or a row or a weightlifting. So we're picking physio-based goals, creating an event around it in order to hopefully inspire and empower people to participate and to move more. And yeah, the goal is also to kind of build community. So with these types of events, basically the way they work is aged care homes will compete against other aged care homes from around Australia. So it's not just a mini event within the home. You join a team, and we do everything we can to not only make it feel like a legit competition, but also for homes to feel like they are actually a part of a team. So that's like logos and uniforms, and we put a lot of work into event planning and the design of the resources that we put out to really kind of, I guess, tap into that little bit of competitive drive and make it feel like residents are really a part of something.
Organisations engage regardless of whether they're customers. That's something I've noticed.
Yeah, so right from the start, we essentially put these ideas out, mostly just through LinkedIn, sort of said, hey, this is an event that we're running. And I think COVID, to be honest, was a big motivator for that. So initially when we ran these events, we actually ran them face-to-face. So we ran a couple of events before COVID where we spent sort of 4 weeks with residents training to participate in events. So we ran a strongman competition in the Southern Highlands called the Southern Highlands Games, which was unbelievable. Still one of my favourite days in aged care. We had 2 homes participate. So that was, I think, in 2018 when Guide was probably only 6 months old. And then in 2019, we ran an event called the Blaze Battle using Blaze Pods. Anyone who's interested in supporting older adults to get moving, Blaze Pods are awesome. Look those up.
Essentially these discs that light up and they create a stimulus for somebody who's exercising to reach, stretch, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you got it. There's different brackets that you can use to attach them to different things. So yeah, I think they're a really cool tool.
Don't tell my personal trainer about those. They look like it could make every exercise a little bit more painful.
Yeah. I would say more fun. Will, you're looking at it the wrong way.
More fun.
Make it more fun.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's probably where we're misaligned, me and my PT. Fun and pain. What he thinks is fun, I think it's painful.
Well, you make a good point though. Like that is probably our biggest challenge. So as physios trying to motivate people to exercise, and a massive part of the motivation around it is like we need to make exercise fun. So the Blaze Pods are a tool that we can use kind of every day, but you really need to make exercise not feel like exercise. Now, some older people will love it. Like they love the fact that we can get them in the gym, throw some kettlebells around and use some battle ropes. And they love the fact that it feels like they're exercising. It's legitimate, the same types of things that they may have done when they're younger or even in their older life. But many of the older adults that we work with, we need to be a bit more creative because the E word, exercise is not everyone's best friend as they get older. There is this kind of perception with many older adults, like, what's the point? Or, why should I do this? Or, it's, I'm too old. The old, I'm too old thing, we get that a lot. So these events are just one way that we can make exercise seem a lot more fun. And also they really create a purpose, give people something to work towards. And again, like being part of the team is a massive part of that.
Yeah. And they create a time-bound window as well. And I think when we think about what works well with learning, any time that you can bring in that extrinsic motivator, a deadline, a date that something goes live or something comes off the website or something along those lines, it creates the sense of urgency, which sometimes is just that last little 1% that you need in order to engage an audience. Do you find that the time-bound nature of, say, for example, the Boston Marathon event is happening on a day when maybe the Boston Marathon gets run? Is that how you design them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we recently wrapped up our London Marathon event. So the way that style of event works, we've run 3 of these now. So we did the Tokyo Marathon last year, or the year before. We did an event called the Everest, which is a similar concept. I'll talk you through these or how they work. Basically, what we do is we set up a marathon track within every aged care home that we work with. And that track essentially is set up with a start and an end point, hopefully a circuit if we can. And then along the journey of that circuit, we get key landmarks. So it might be that you're coming across Big Ben. And we encourage our teams to print off these really nicely designed kind of posters that'll say, this is Big Ben. Big Ben was built in such and such year, designed by so-and-so. And as part of the race, we always do things like race guides. So everyone participating can read the race guide and learn about how you prepare for the race and what the journey is like. We try and use emotive language. Residents can then, on their own or as part of exercise groups or be supported by staff, to essentially complete laps of the marathon track every day. So every time they complete a lap, we just mark off a line on their name. And we know that marathon track is, 200 meters long or 250 meters long, whatever the space that homes have available. And then we work with either the physio teams or the leisure and lifestyle teams, and they then record the distances on a Google Docs spreadsheet. So it's all pretty low tech, which I think is kind of cool. I know this podcast is about innovation. And for us, working within the aged care space, we need to be creative. So by going with low tech, we can make it accessible for everyone. It's very easy for us to implement.
Low budget, low cost.
Yeah, exactly.
Does it cost people anything to participate in this?
We generally put these out, the resources out for free. As I said, it's about impact. Look, one of our values is social justice. So what we're trying to do is create, an equitable environment, make sure that we're doing everything we can to kind of support our adults to have access to the sorts of things that they would, whether they're in aged care, living at home or whatever. We put these ones out for free.
That's fantastic. So maybe to summarize the events before we move the conversation along, could you give us some data points, some numbers, metrics on the impact that the events, how much engagement are you seeing, and how would you describe the care outcomes that the participants are getting from that?
We got more than 1,000 residents participate in the London Marathon.
Wow.
Yeah, which was cool. So that was across, I think, 47-ish homes participated in this one. We actually ended up with about 500 staff participate as well. So in a separate event, which was really cool. And what we've actually done with this event is we sent out pedometers to about 20 homes before the event. So we've actually taken some data of step counts before the event, during the event, and after the event. So we haven't actually consolidated that data yet because we just got our post-event data wrapped up last week. But we know step counts are a great way of measuring activity levels, particularly looking at people's community, like what people were doing in the community before they came into residential aged care. And the numbers are quite frightening as far as how quickly the activity levels drop off, particularly step count as a measure of that activity. So it's about a 70% drop. So we know the social impact. We get great feedback coming in. For some of the events that we run, we'll do like a 4 weeks of competition, and then we'll do 1 week of live streamed events. So during the live streamed events, I get to go and chat with teams, and we get to see 15 different homes, they're all rowing in the 30-second row challenge. And then I'll get to have a chat with the residents. We see the social impact and obviously the feedback we get from on-site staff and management and residents is awesome. But yeah, it'll be cool to have some metrics. But yeah, we did one called the Real World Games in 2021, and it was designed to try and encourage residents to get back out into the community after COVID. So like a couple of years of lockdowns, and all of the events that we did were designed around typical challenges within the community. So things like stepping over a curb, crossing at a set of light. The set of lights are set up in a way that you have to be able to walk at a certain speed. And that's one of the ways that we calculate what they call community ambulation. So we assess anyone who could participate in, I think it was a 10-meter walking stretch, and you had to walk at a certain speed. So essentially, by the end of the event, we were able to classify 93% of people as community ambulants. So 93% of people who participated in that event were able to walk quick enough that they would qualify for that metric as being community ambulance. So
what was it prior to the event?
Well, it escapes me. I should be more prepared. I think it was below 50%. Yeah, but to get to the 93% was a great outcome. And
no, absolutely. That's a great outcome. So that's a fantastic innovation, and it's one that has sustained, over many years now. But as a business, how do you keep having those types of hits? That was your passion and vision as the founder. Guide's a much larger organization now. So can you talk a little bit about what you're doing to continue to innovate as a company?
Yeah. So one of the cool things about growing as a business is we continue to bring on more and more passionate clinicians and other team members. Our vision is to lead a movement where creativity delivers positive change. So the cool thing about as we grow is we now have access to all of these great ideas and kind of young minds and excited people who kind of want to create an impact and be a part of the impact that we're trying to drive. So one of the things we do, which I think is pretty cool, is we run something called our RISE Awards. So RISE are our values. So they stand for reliability, innovation, social justice, and empowerment. That wasn't deliberate, by the way, Will. That was just a lucky land.
I don't believe you. I think there's too many layers. It's like a triple entendre, including standing up, right? Probably a key exercise.
Yeah. So there's so much going on there. But yeah, no, it wasn't deliberate, but it did fall together. I don't think we came up with those in that order, but when we looked at it, we're like, oh, hang on, that works. So yeah, so the way the RISE Awards work, every quarter, we focus on a different value, so whether that's reliability or innovation, and then we encourage our teams to basically submit an idea, an implementation, or an outcome which reflects that value. And we've had some incredible ideas. So they will essentially join an all-staff Teams call. They've got sort of 5 minutes to pitch their idea. So some will present a video that they've cut together, some will do a PowerPoint.
Does everybody have to pitch?
We do 6 monthly career development reviews, and we do actually have within that career development as a KPI that we ask everyone to submit at least one biannually. We love the way it challenges people to think about what they're doing and then try and do things differently. Like, not only is it great, it's kind of, we're teaching that peer-based support, so we're kind of sharing ideas, but it's great for them to kind of sit back and go, have I evolved what I'm doing as a physio on site? Has my program changed in any way that's creating great outcomes? So we might change that to once a quarter, but at the moment it's the expectation is twice a year. Sorry.
You said that it was an idea, an implementation, or an outcome, and I think that's quite fascinating because that's the 3 stages of any initiative that it can move through. It's an idea. Okay, well, now we're going to execute on it. So what's the implementation? Okay, we've implemented it. What was the outcome? So do you get people to frame it in those different ways? Or is that just talking to the stage that the initiative's at?
Yeah, more so speaking to the stage. And I think the reason we did it that way, to be honest, Will, I didn't know that was an actual process. That was more just the way it fell into place. But it makes sense.
Yeah, well, I think the best organising systems are the ones that self-organise.
Well, it sounds like we got lucky on that one. But no, I think the thought process behind it was that we didn't want team members to feel like they had to present something that was finished. Often, like, it could be just, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. And then the cool thing about coming in at that stage and presenting that to the teams is they're just as likely to win with that idea. And just quickly, the way that it essentially works is that we all vote. So everyone who's on that team call, all of our staff members will then vote on whoever's presented. It's very democratic. We don't pick as a leadership team, everyone picks. So, and often the submission that I love is often not the one that wins, which is cool because I think it's great. But the cool thing about coming in with that idea stage is it often then ends up getting built out. So it either is built out because we look at it and go, hey, that's a cool idea. So we'll then reach out to that team member and be like, hey, let's work on this. Like, how do we get it to that, maybe that implementation and eventually that outcome? The first one that comes to mind during COVID is actually one of our OTs down in Victoria. She recognized that she was having difficulty communicating with many of the residents that she was working with because everyone was wearing masks. And obviously many older adults experience hearing loss. So she developed these communication cards that were around typical interactions that care staff would have throughout the day. So it might be, are you hungry? Do you need to go to the bathroom? It's dinner time. And even more specific to like, can I help you to stand up? Can you move your feet back? Can you put your arms on the chair? So like anything process driven became cards that she could use to show. So when this was pitched as part of our Rise Awards, we had so many team members who were like, this is awesome. I could really use this. I can think of half a dozen residents who would need it. So then we thought, well, it's a great idea, but in order to do this within the aged care environment and during COVID with infection control issues and what have you, like how do we do this? Because you're going to have to print off, 20 sets of cards per home, and you need to cut them out, laminate them, and like how do you keep them organized? All these sorts of issues. So we thought the best way to make this available to everyone, and again, coming back to this idea of commitment to social justice and trying to create this impact as large as we possibly can, we thought we'll build an app. So we ended up building it ourselves. We just used Appy Pie. We redesigned the cards in Canva. We found a template that would work. We uploaded those communication cards into different decks within the template. So it had limitations, but we did the best we could with our kind of creative thinking around problem solving. We needed this to get out there as quickly as possible.
How much would you say it did cost you to build that app?
So it cost us a Canva subscription, which we already had, and it cost us a monthly subscription to Appy Pie, which was not a whole lot. And then we made it available for free, and we had to pay to host it like a business account through Apple and an Android account. And so it was costing us money to actually have that available for everyone, and we pushed it out as best we can, and some industry publications really jumped on board with us and helped us to promote it. We set some goals early on that we wanted to be recognized as an innovative company, and I think it was in late 2021, we entered the Australian Financial Review's most innovative companies, and we ended up being ranked the 5th most innovative healthcare company in Australia.
Wow.
Which, as a business that was 2.5 years old, was quite ridiculous. The only sad thing, Will, is because I think COVID was still happening, we didn't get a nice fancy dinner. All we got was a pre-recorded link that we watched ourselves win, sitting in our little office in Rosebery. But it was still very exciting to be ranked 5th. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, look, that's not why we do it, but it was a cool little outcome from that. And again, it all was driven from this Rise Awards initiative. Like, we wouldn't have even known that this was something that our OT, Elizabeth, down in Victoria was doing. But because of this opportunity to kind of share these innovative ideas and then collaborate and build on those ideas, we would create this amazing outcome, and something that we're very proud of. And we continue to look at ways of support it. And I should say as well, we basically have a first, second, and third every quarter, and we actually donate equipment to the home of the person who wins. So what's cool about that is it creates evolution itself. So it might be another set of lace pods, or it might be, any other equipment that can create a great impact.
I'd love to hear your perspective, having run an organisation like Guide now for a number of years, where you've been a consistent deliverer of innovation through this program and these various activities. What advice would you have for the people, at the point of care who are wanting to build an app like the one you've described, or make a change? They have an idea, but they're in a workplace where there's not a program like the RISE program to capture that idea and give it resources to bring it to life.
There's a couple of things that come to mind. The first one is we're all faced with challenges, particularly, within the sector that we work. There's so many challenges. And I think one of my goals at Guide is to kind of encourage everyone to recognize that if we're creative, we can overcome many of the challenges that we're faced with. Whether that's looking for a cost-effective solution or a low-tech solution. Look, I love creativity, and I think if we're creative, we can overcome many challenges. But the other thing I think that comes to mind is that innovation doesn't always need to be a massive idea. Innovation can occur every single day on micro levels. Innovation might be just improving, a referral system, which means that we save some time, which means that we can see more people and create a bigger impact in that way. Innovation doesn't always mean technology. Innovation can be putting in a meeting which creates efficiency, or maybe how we structure that meeting to prove how we're approaching things. Innovation is just about trying to do things better. And I don't pretend to be an expert in innovation, but I think one of the things that we try and get across to our teams is that you don't need to have the massive idea. We can really create a snowball effect and really, look back and go, wow, look at where we were 12 months or 18 months or 2 years ago to where we are now. And it wasn't about the fact that we came up with this huge idea. It was more about that we constantly created these little micro changes that in totality had huge impact for the other line or over time.
A really inspiring way to finish the show. So thank you so much for coming on, Simon. It's been wonderful to chat with you.
Thanks, Will. Really appreciate the opportunity. And nice to catch up. I'll see you at a conference sometime soon.
Absolutely. And if people want to get in touch with you, where should they reach out? Where's the best place? LinkedIn? Your website?
Well, as we've spoken about, my LinkedIn, I've forgotten a little bit slack, but I am on LinkedIn. So it's Simon Kerrigan, Guide Healthcare. Our website is guidehealthcare.com.au. And all my contact details are on my LinkedIn profile.
Thank you so much, Simon. You've been listening to Outcomes, a show about uncovering the hundreds of micro innovations that help make Australia's healthcare system one of the best in the world. This podcast is produced by AusMed, one of Australia's leading providers of educational content and software to the health, aged, disability, community and allied health sectors. To find out more, head to our website, ausmed.com.au. To make sure you don't miss an episode of Outcomes, be sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your favourite podcasting app. And while you're there, please leave us a 5-star review, as it really helps others to find the show. I'm Will Egan, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Outcomes.